The diner was supposed to be just another forgettable stop on the late-night shift, a place where tired truckers, gossiping locals, and college kids drifted in and out. But for Lorine, it was survival. The waitress apron she tied around her waist every evening wasn't just fabric, it was her shield. It hid the truth of who she really was, and more importantly, the secret she carried since birth. A secret even she barely understood. She had perfected invisibility, quiet smiles, quick refills, pretending not to notice when customers whispered behind their menus about her plain looks or the way she never fit in. But then he walked in. Silas Stone, the billionaire no one ever expected to set foot in a place like this. His presence bent the room, like gravity itself answered to him. Dark suit, sharp eyes, and a restless energy that screamed power. Lorine thought she could just serve him coffee, maybe even hide from his gaze. But fate had other plans. One sharp tug, one careless moment, and the thin cotton of her shirt tore. Gasps filled the diner. Because there, on her shoulder, gleamed a birthmark shaped like fire. The kind whispered about in old love stories, said to mark the one destined for greatness or destruction. And in that instant, the billionaire who had everything realized the one thing he didn't own was her. The rain had been hammering the windows since I clocked in, steady needles that turned the glass into a trembling drum. I tied my apron tighter, the cotton soft and fraying at the seams. To everyone else, it was just uniform. To me, it was armor. It hid the shape of me, muted me, reminded me to stay invisible. Nights at the diner were about survival, not being seen. The urn hissed behind the counter, filling the air with the sharp scent of coffee. Neon from the open sign spilled red light across the chrome, painting the room in a strange glow. Truckers slouched at the counter, college kids whispered over half-eaten fries, and Marlene worked quietly beside me, folding napkins into tidy triangles. She was the only one who ever looked at me like I wasn't a shadow. "Storm like this," she murmured, stacking silverware into a glass. "It drags things out. Secrets, tempers, sometimes both." I forced a smile, tucking stray hair behind my ear. "Then let's hope it only drags in tips tonight." She gave me a long look, the kind that saw too much, and went back to her napkins. The bell over the door jingled, and every sound in the diner seemed to stutter. He walked in like the storm had opened the door for him. Dark suit, sharp lines, rain clinging to his shoulders without daring to soak him. Silas Stone. I knew the name, even if I'd never expected to see him anywhere near a place like this. Billionaire, power broker. A man people whispered about as if saying too much might summon him. And now he was here, in my diner. Looking around like the air belonged to him. He chose a booth by the window, where rain ran in silver rivers down the glass. The chatter of the college kids faltered. Even the truckers glanced up from their plates. His presence bent the room, pulled the air tighter. Marlene nudged the coffee pot toward me. "Go on," she whispered. My throat was dry, but my hands knew the motion. Pour, smile, retreat. That was all I had to do. I picked up the pot and walked toward him, each step sounding louder than the storm. "Coffee?" I asked. He lifted his gaze, and the weight of it made my stomach flip. His eyes weren't cold exactly, but steady in a way that pinned me to the spot. "Please," he said. I poured, careful not to spill, though my hand shook faintly. The storm rattled the window just then, making the light tremble across his face. "How late are you open?" he asked. "Depends who needs what," I managed, clutching the pot a little too tightly. A shadow of a smile touched his mouth. "Good policy." I nodded, eager to retreat, but when I turned, his hand brushed mine. A quick movement, meant to steady me when I nearly tipped the cup. Strong fingers closed around my wrist before I could react. The sudden jolt tugged at my sleeve. The fabric gave way with a sharp, tearing sound that echoed louder than the thunder outside. Gasps swept through the diner. A hush fell so absolute, I could hear my own pulse hammering in my ears. I froze, staring down at the rip in my shirt, at the bare skin he'd exposed without meaning to. My shoulder was uncovered, and with it, my mark. The flame-shaped birthmark curled across my skin, dark and undeniable. It had haunted me my whole life, turned me into a ghost in every town I'd tried to live. People had called it cursed, called me cursed. I always kept it hidden. Always. Now it was out in the open, under the harsh fluorescent lights. Silas's hand loosened, dropping away as if he understood too late what he'd done. But his eyes stayed fixed on my shoulder, not with disgust, not with pity, but with something that twisted deeper than either. Recognition. Whispers rose around us like smoke. Fire mark. Old stories. Means fate, don't it? Or destruction. I clutched the torn fabric, pressing it against my skin, wishing I could sink into the floor. My breath felt stolen, my chest tight. The stairs pricked like needles, each one a verdict I couldn't escape. Silas stood slowly, his chair barely scraping. He didn't reach for me again, but his attention wrapped around me as firmly as his hand had a moment ago. His gaze met mine, steady, unwavering. May I? His voice caught, low but sure. I've seen that mark before. My stomach flipped, ice and fire tangling inside me. You're mistaken, I whispered. Am I? His eyes held me, searching. Marlene was at my side in an instant, tugging the apron higher, covering me with her small, fierce hands. It's nothing, she said, loud enough for the room. Y'all eat your food, mind your own business. But the silence had teeth. The whispers clung to the air, and Silas didn't look away. I pulled the fabric tighter, my hand shaking over the flame on my skin. My heart wanted to bolt, to run out into the storm until the night swallowed me whole. But my legs stayed rooted, caught between exposure and defiance. I had spent years hiding. Tonight, hiding wasn't an option. If a secret you've hidden your whole life was exposed in public, I thought, staring at the man who'd torn my shield away, would you run or stand your ground? Tell me in the comments. I pressed my palm hard against my shoulder, willing the fire to vanish back beneath skin. But Silas Stone stood there, eyes locked on me, and for the first time I wondered if the mark wasn't just a curse. Because he didn't look away. Not once. Morning light never felt like relief to Lorine, only a pause between one set of whispers and the next. She had grown up on the edges of places, her mother dragging her through towns like someone sweeping crumbs from a table. Never settling, always watching. The birthmark was the reason. It curled across her shoulder like fire given shape, and in every new place the story was the same. Children pointed, adults judged, neighbors found a way to call it omen or curse. So Lorine learned to leave first, before leaving became another humiliation. The diner was the longest she had stayed anywhere, and even here she lived by one rule. Keep the mark hidden, keep her voice low, keep herself small enough to be forgotten. Her dream was modest, an apartment of her own, a door that locked, and a life where no one stared when she walked into a room. A quiet life that belonged only to her. But the quiet she wanted had cracked the night Silas Stone stepped through the door and tore open not just her shirt, but the barrier she had built around herself. Silas carried the storm with him when he left, yet he felt its residue long after. Boardrooms should have distracted him, but as he sat through presentations and numbers, the memory of the diner played again and again. He was bored of the glass towers, the hollow applause of prophets, the endless faces who smiled at him like they were waiting for permission to breathe. His family's empire had been his inheritance, but never his choice. Since boyhood, he had heard his grandfather's stories about a prophecy carved into the foundation of their fortune, a flame mark that would either end the Stone dynasty or redeem it. He had dismissed it as myth until the diner fell silent, and he saw that mark with his own eyes. Wyatt noticed the distraction instantly. Wyatt always noticed. Sharp in his pressed suit, precise in his schedule, he was the man who measured Silas's hours and shielded his image. To him, the girl in the diner was a liability, the kind of story that caught fire for all the wrong reasons. "We should avoid going back," Wyatt advised when the subject came up. "Attention has already started. Reporters will smell it." But Silas only sipped his water and said, "Some storms are worth walking into twice." Marlene watched Lorine work the morning shift and shook her head at how the girl tried to disappear in plain sight. When the older woman poured sugar into a glass, she said softly, "Baby, hiding is still a kind of losing." Lorine bristled, but Marlene's eyes held a warmth that didn't let her brush it off. The world already decided what it thinks. You don't have to help it. Lorine didn't answer, but the words settled like seeds in her chest. The bell above the door chimed that afternoon, and the storm returned, dressed again in dark lines and steady eyes. Silas chose a booth without looking at the menu. "Her section, please," he told Marlene, voice polite but unyielding. Lorine froze where she stood, clutching a pot of coffee. Marlene gave her a nudge. "Go on," she whispered. She carried water to his table. He thanked her, then added, "Do you mind if I ask you questions? You can say no to any of them." His tone was gentle, not prying, but it unsettled her more than command might have. She refilled his cup without answering. He smiled faintly, accepting her silence as its own kind of permission. Between orders, she passed his table again and again. Small exchanges layered themselves like fragile bricks. A question about how long she had worked here, a remark about the storm rolling back in, a shared silence when thunder shook the windows. They spoke little, but something passed between them in the pauses, something that felt heavier than words. Wyatt arrived halfway through, sliding into the booth with the tension of a man who wanted to be anywhere else. He reminded Silas of meetings, pointed out a figure lingering outside the diner with a phone angled too precisely. A reporter, perhaps, already circling the story. Wyatt's gaze landed on Lorine with the sharp judgment of someone evaluating risk. She felt it pierce through her apron and jacket, the same way townsfolk always had. But Silas waved him off. "Order something," he said. "We're staying." Lorine brought a plate of pie to the next table and heard Marlene's quiet voice behind her. "You can't stop people from staring, honey, but you can choose not to bow your head while they do it." Lorine's throat tightened. She had bowed her head all her life, but Silas's eyes kept finding her, lifting her chin without a touch. When she returned to his booth to clear plates, he asked, "If no one stared at you, what kind of life would you want?" She almost dropped the dish. The question was too big, too dangerous. But she whispered, "A life that fits without me having to shrink." His expression shifted, the edges of power giving way to something quieter. "That seems like the right size for a life," he said. The words stayed with her even after they left, Wyatt checking his watch, Silas tipping his head to her in parting. Outside, the reporter still hovered, scribbling in a notebook. Rumors had begun to move like wind, about a billionaire seen with a waitress, about a mark whispered in old stories. Lorine pressed her palm over her shoulder through the fabric, feeling the heat of the fire that had burned her into invisibility. But Silas Stone had looked at it as if it meant something more. And for the first time in years, Lorine wondered if quiet was truly what she wanted, or if she had only settled for it because she was too afraid to want anything louder. The diner's neon hum was softer in the morning, but the quiet did not mean safety. Lorine moved through her shift with the rhythm she had mastered: pour, clear, smile, vanish. Yet eyes lingered longer today. Customers she barely knew tilted their phones at her, too casually, and conversations trailed off when she passed. Marlene caught it first. She tightened her lips as if she had tasted something sour. By noon, the reason revealed itself. A college kid with nervous hands fumbled his phone at the counter. On the screen, her. Frozen in fluorescent light, shoulder bare, birthmark flaring against her skin. The moment Silas had torn her shirt, looped into an endless replay. Laughter bubbled in the background of the clip, the sound of people both thrilled and afraid. "It's everywhere," Marlene whispered, pressing her palm over Lorine's hand before the girl could snatch the phone away. "You can't fight the wind once it's out." Lorine's breath caught in her chest. She had been careful her whole life, bending herself around layers of fabric and silence, and one careless tug had turned her secret into spectacle. The weight of every stare doubled. She wanted to run, but her legs betrayed her by staying. Across town, Jordan watched the same clip on a sleek screen in his office. His smile sharpened as he leaned back in his chair. For months, he had circled the diner's block through shell companies, buying up property to build his leverage against Silas Stone. Now fate had delivered him the perfect weapon, a prophecy whispered in boardrooms and bedtime stories alike, revived by a single viral moment. "Make the next offer," he told his assistant. "Double it. That diner falls, Stone follows." Back at the counter, the bell chimed. Silas entered, presence bending the air once more. He moved directly to Lorine, ignoring the whispers that followed him. His gaze flicked toward a booth, toward Wyatt already waiting with his briefcase, but he remained by her side. "You've seen it?" he asked, voice low, not cruel. She didn't need to answer. The redness at her throat was reply enough. "My family carried a story," he continued, "that someone marked by flame would either destroy us or redeem us. Last night I thought of it as myth. This morning, half the city speaks of nothing else." Lorine stiffened, hands gripping the coffee pot. "I am not your myth." "No," he agreed. "You are not. You're—" He broke off, catching himself. "But others will not care what you are. They will see only what the story makes of you." Her anger sparked sharp enough to cut through the fear. "I have lived my whole life under that weight. You think you're the first to call me prophecy? Curse? Omen? You don't know me. I'm not a legend, Silas. I'm a person. And I am tired of people trying to decide who I should be." For a moment, neither of them moved. The diner held its breath around them, customers pretending not to listen. The storm outside had eased, but thunder still grumbled on the horizon like an echo of their exchange. Silas exhaled, his jaw tightened, then softened. He wanted to say more, but he saw the steel in her eyes and let it be. Instead, he asked, "What will you do now?" The question sliced open two paths. She could disappear again, slip out of this town as she had a dozen times before, vanish before the whispers turned into stones. Or she could stay, finish her shift under the fluorescent light, and face every stare head-on. Her chest burned with fear, but her hands poured coffee into a trucker's cup without spilling. She heard her own voice answer, steadier than she felt. "I'll work, same as always." It was a choice small on the surface, but it rang louder inside her than any thunder. She would not run. Not tonight. Not this time. Silas studied her with something that looked like respect. He inclined his head, a vow without words. In his mind, decision coiled tight. He would protect her. Not possess, not control, protect. The prophecy could bend or break under his hand, but he would not let it consume her. Outside, a reporter lingered near the glass, phone lifted to catch silhouettes. Inside, whispers curled like smoke around Lorine's bare shoulder beneath the mended shirt. Fear pressed against her ribs, but she refused to bow her head. She stacked plates, wiped tables, carried on. The world had decided to make her story its own, but she had made her choice. She would stay and face it. And in the quiet space between her decision and the next storm, Silas Stone's eyes never left her. The diner had become their meeting place, though Silas never called it that. He simply showed up night after night, claiming his booth by the rain-streaked window. Lorine tried to pretend it was coincidence, but everyone knew billionaires didn't stumble into greasy spoons twice in 1 week. The whispers had shifted from awe to suspicion, and each time she stepped out of the kitchen, she felt eyes tracing her like punctuation marks. But when she slid into the booth across from him one night, apron dusted with flour and exhaustion etched in her face. He only asked simple questions. "How was your day? Did you get any sleep after closing? What keeps you here instead of leaving like you said you always do?" He asked without interrogation, listened without judgment. And when thunder cracked above the diner roof, he didn't fill the silence. He let her sit there with him, breathing in the sound of rain, her fingers curling loosely around the edge of his coffee cup as though it might anchor her. It was the kind of quiet that felt dangerous, because it wasn't empty. It was charged. The charge broke when Wyatt appeared, briefcase in hand, suit immaculate, expression taut as steel wire. He slid into the booth beside Silas, pinching the bridge of his nose. "We have a problem." Silas didn't look away from Lorine. "We always do." "This one is bleeding fast," Wyatt shot back. He opened his case, slid a tablet across the table, and tapped the glowing screen. Headlines blazed in bold. "Stone Empire Shaken by Prophecy Scandal. Small-town curse tied to billionaire heir. Diner girl or doomed flame." Lorine's throat closed. Her shoulder itched beneath the fabric as if the mark burned through it. Wyatt's voice hardened. "Stock dropped 6% in 2 days. The board is restless. Investors are pulling back, saying you're too distracted to lead. And all this because you keep showing up here because of her." "She's not a myth," Silas said. "You don't see what I see." Wyatt's jaw clenched. "Every camera in this county is waiting for her to step outside without you. Every reporter knows the diner by heart now. And while you sit here drinking coffee, Jordan is buying up property with shell companies. He's painting you as a predator exploiting this town. And people believe him." Silas finally turned from Lorine to face him. "Jordan's a vulture. He always has been." Wyatt leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Jordan may be a vulture, but he's winning. He planted that forged ledger. Old payouts, debts that make your family look like they built this empire on the backs of these people. It's spreading online as fact. The narrative is shifting against you. Against us." Lorine's stomach dropped. She whispered, "Is it true?" "No," Silas said instantly, his voice raw. "But truth matters less than the story people want to believe." Wyatt gestured at the phone buzzing in Silas's pocket. "That's the board. They've called 3 times in the last hour. They want answers, they want you in New York, instead you're here." Silas didn't reach for the phone. His gaze held Lorine's. "I'm where I need to be." Wyatt's temper cracked. "You are risking the company for a girl and a prophecy. Do you understand? You're using corporate security to monitor this diner. You're missing board calls. You're ignoring investors because you'd rather sit in this booth." His hand slammed flat on the table. "This company is bleeding because you've chosen her over everything else." Lorine flinched, but Silas's expression didn't falter. He spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "I am choosing not to abandon someone who never asked to be in this storm. That is not weakness, Wyatt. That is strength." The phone buzzed again, insistent, the board demanding his presence. Silas silenced it with one touch. The act was small, but in Wyatt's eyes, it was catastrophic. "You just proved my point," Wyatt said, shoving back from the booth. "You'd rather lose everything than answer them. God help you if Jordan strikes harder." He left in a rush of pressed wool and thunder. Lorine sat frozen, torn between gratitude and guilt. "He's right," she whispered. "You shouldn't be here. Not when the world is watching. Not when your company is falling apart because of me." Silas leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. "Lorine, listen to me. My company has survived recessions, betrayals, and boardroom coups. It will survive this. What it cannot survive, what I cannot survive, is pretending you don't matter." Her heart lurched, but fear clawed at her ribs. "I don't want to be handled, Silas. I don't want to be protected like some fragile secret." "Then don't be." His voice softened, eyes steady. "Work your shifts. Keep your life. I will not take that from you. But I will stand here, as long as you'll let me, against whoever tries to strip it away." For the first time, she believed him. But the storm outside was no longer only rain. Xander had begun haunting the diner, a silent shadow at the counter. He never ordered more than a coffee, never spoke more than a word, but his eyes never left Silas or Lorine. The weight of his stare followed her through every aisle, a reminder that Jordan's reach was long and patient. Marlene noticed too. One night, after Xander left with rain dripping from his jacket, she set down her tea and told Lorine quietly, "Flames warm or burn, but it's the hand holding the fire that decides. Don't let someone else hold yours." Lorine swallowed hard. The mark pulsed under her skin, both curse and promise. The rumors deepened, the diner walls no longer enough to keep them out. Customers brought whispers like offerings. The prophecy will destroy him. She's his undoing. She's the reason Stone shares are sinking. Each word chipped at Lorine's resolve, but she refused to leave. She scrubbed floors, refilled cups, wore her apron like armor. One night, as the storm pressed hard against the windows, the roof seam gave way. Water dripped steadily into a bucket near the booth. Lorine rushed to catch it, slipping on the wet tile. Silas caught her arm, steadied her, and when their faces drew close enough to share breath, the world narrowed to that fragile moment. Their lips hovered, dangerously near, almost tasting the promise that trembled between them. Then the bell over the door chimed, shattering it. A family of 4 trudged in, umbrellas dripping, children bickering, and the spell dissolved. Lorine pulled back, cheeks flushed. Silas leaned away, hiding disappointment behind his coffee cup. The bucket dripped, the storm howled, and the distance between them held more weight than any touch could. The rain finally broke, leaving the city rinsed and reflective, and Silas asked Lorine for 1 hour away from the diner. He did not choose a glass tower or any place with cameras. He led her to a quiet stone foundation annex, a brick building that smelled of lemon oil. Wyatt unlocked the door, expression neutral. "Records only," Silas said. "If you want to leave, we leave." Lorine nodded. He opened an archive drawer and lifted a velvet-lined case. Inside lay a brass plaque, a crest, a stylized flame coiled in the shape she wore beneath her shirt. Silas set it on felt. "My grandfather hung this in his study. I thought it was decoration. There's writing on the back." He turned the plaque. Script caught the light. He read, voice low. "When the room falls silent for the flame-marked one, the house of stone shall end, or begin anew." Lorine had spent a life refusing the stories people laid over her, and now here was a story hammered into metal with her outline in it. "What am I to you?" she asked, careful as glass. "A person or a solution?" Silas closed his eyes, bracing. "You are yourself. Yes, I thought of the legend when I saw you, and I hated that reflex. I brought you here so the truth could sit between us, not behind us." Wyatt cleared his throat in the doorway and offered a slim folder. "She should have this," he said. Lorine opened the dossier. Maps around the diner bloomed in pale outlines, shell companies repeated like a chant, closing schedules, projected permits, a note, "Accelerate acquisition after media event." Photos, the reporter by the window, the same black sedan 3 nights running, grainy stills of Xander's profile. Wyatt had dated everything in neat hand. "Jordan has been circling for weeks," Wyatt said. "Long before the video. He waited for a story to weaponize. I should have put this in your hands sooner." Lorine traced a lot line with her fingertip. Anger steadied her. "So I'm not the cause, only the excuse." "Exactly," Wyatt said. Marlene's shoes made a homey music on the boards as she came in with a thermos, diner coffee rising like a benediction. "Figured you two would forget to eat," she said, setting paper cups by a stack of newsletters. Her eyes found the plaque and softened. "Haven't seen that since I was a girl." "You know it?" Silas asked. Sort of. Marlene tipped the plaque the way you handle something that once lived in a kitchen. An old-timer recited the line at parades, back when folks thought words could keep houses standing. She squinted. But he always added something, and I don't see it here. What did he say? Lorine asked. Marlene spoke it so she wouldn't lose it. The ending is chosen by the bearer. She pressed a palm to her shoulder. Not by the house, not by the crowd, by the one who carries the flame. Silas's breath went out of him. The prophecy tilted, less threat than door. Lorine felt the floor find her feet. Choice, not curse. She looked at Silas and saw a man not asking to use her, but asking to stand where she could see him. The heat under her collarbone felt less like a brand and more like a lantern in fog. I don't trust legends, she said, but I trust what people do with them. Then look at what I'm doing, Silas answered. He spread his hands. Wyatt thinks I'm breaking the company over a myth. He isn't wrong to be afraid. I am afraid too. My family has hurt people in the name of permanence. I have signed papers that built and broke things. I wake at 3 with ghosts at my throat. I don't know how to carry this without repeating harm, but I know I will not repeat it with you. I want to choose better, with you, not over you. Silence gathered, making space for truth. Wyatt looked down. Marlene fussed with cups to hide a small smile. Lorine stepped closer. She set her fingertips on the cool rim of the plaque, then on the warmer edge of Silas's sleeve. You're not the only one awake at 3, she said. I've been running so long I forgot what stopping feels like. I'm not a prophecy, but I will decide what this mark means. His answering smile was boyish. Tell me, and I will follow. She should have stepped back. She did not. When she rose on her toes and he bent, their mouths found each other with care that trembled. It was not a crash. It was the first honest thing after too many practiced silences. A shoe scraped in the hall. Xander leaned against the door jamb, rain ticking from his jacket to the floor, a smile like a knife under words. Apologies for the intrusion, he said. He lifted his phone, screen recording, thumb poised to send. Message from Jordan, name your price. Wyatt stepped between the lens and the couple. You're trespassing. Xander's grin widened. I'm shopping. Seems you're selling beginnings and endings in here. He tipped his chin toward Lorine, lingering on the place her shirt hid. What do you think, Flame Girl? How much to end a dynasty? Marlene's thermos clicked shut, clean as a gavel. Tell your boss the store is closed, she said. Lorine met Xander's gaze and felt the lantern steady into a flame she could hold. Tell Jordan this, she said, voice clear. I don't take prices. I make choices. Xander's eyes flattened. We'll see who chooses when the crowd starts shouting. He pocketed the phone, stepped back into the wet, and let the door close without a sound. Wyatt threw the deadbolt. Silas turned to Lorine, apology and awe mixing on his face. Lorine touched the plaque once more, then took Silas's hand. Is destiny something you follow, or something you fight to rewrite? What would you do if you were Lorine? Morning brought no calm. News vans lined the diner lot like armored beetles, dishes aimed at the windows. Microphones hovered over the counter. Cameras peered through pie domes. Every clink of china sounded recorded. Questions swarmed. Statements. Prophecy. The flame. Lorine kept her sweater high and moved as if the aisles were bridges. Comments bloomed. Close it. Cleanse it. While Marlene burned a placard taped to the door. By 10, suppliers were delayed. A vendor texted regrets about brand protection. 2 men filmed from the corner booth. When Lorine set coffee down, one whispered, "Smile, prophecy," and captured her flinch. Marlene emerged with a ladle. "Finish your coffee," she said, "or finish your day elsewhere." They left. Across town, the boardroom glittered and bit. Wyatt faced screens where the stock line jogged downward. Volatility is rumor-driven, he said. Jordan is amplifying through cutouts. Forgeries are circulating. A director asked, "Where is Silas?" Wyatt said, "Working. and did not add, in a booth by a window, choosing a person over optics. At noon, an envelope appeared under the door. Inside, a photocopied photo of Lorine, a red X across her shoulder, and a typed line, "Your fire will burn this town." Marlene burned it and locked the back door. Lorine wiped a clean table and calculated exits, the mathematics of leaving. Sponsors canceled the weekly pie promotion with a cheerful note about timing. The bell rang and kept ringing. When Silas entered, the room bent. He stopped at the counter, palms open. "I can move security closer," he murmured. "I can stand between you and the glass." Lorine shook her head. "I won't be handled. Let me work." He nodded, silenced a vibrating phone, and took his booth. On a higher floor, directors met without their chair. "Stone is compromised," one said. Another waved the forged ledger accusing the family of old predations. Optics suggest pattern. A vote to schedule a no-confidence session circled. Wyatt argued procedure, bought hours, then texted Silas 2 words he had never sent. "Answer now." Silas didn't. After the rush, Lorine found her hands too shaky to lift a tray. She went to the office, wrote a note on a receipt, and folded it small. "I won't be the excuse to hurt Marlene or sink you. I'll call when this quiets. Please don't follow." She set Silas's jacket on its hook, slipped into the rain, and chose side streets. A dark sedan idled half a block down, wipers ticking. The passenger window slid low. Xander's voice was smooth and ordinary. "Reporters are circling," he said. "There's a place you can wait without eyes. I'll take you." Lorine kept walking. The sedan paced her. "Or keep dodging lenses alone," he added. Exhaustion opened a door that sense would have closed. She got in. The lock clicked. They drove to the river where warehouses wore dust like old grief. Xander parked at a shuttered packing depot, windows scabbed in plywood. "Just inside," he said. 2 hours quiet. He led her through a side door that stuck and yielded. A bulb hummed over a corridor lined with empty offices. Jordan stepped from a doorway. "Men like Silas don't love," he said. "They own. They make altars and call them rescue." He nodded at a ring light and tripod. "I can save your town. Camera's gone, grants announced, all I need is honesty on video." Lorine looked at the chair before the light. "What honesty?" "Say curse," Jordan murmured. "Say he tore your shirt to feed mythology. Say you reject him and the story he sells. Do that and the vans disappear. Your friend keeps her diner. The board stops sharpening knives. Mercy is cheaper than pride." Fear tried to bow her head. She pictured Marlene's steady hands, pictured Silas silencing his phone not to control her, but to keep her world from cracking. Her spine found itself. "No," she said. Jordan didn't blink. He glanced at Xander. "Secure our brave conscience." Xander's hands were businesslike. The chair scraped. Zip ties hissed around wrists and ankles. Tape pinned forearms to wood. "You could have been helpful," he said. "Now you're a liability." He pushed the chair into a storage room and shut the door. A chain looped through handles. A padlock clicked. The room smelled of rope and damp cardboard. A bulb pooled weak light. Lorine breathed until the air stopped tasting like panic. She remembered friction and angles, the way plastic weakened against a sharpened edge. She dragged the tie against a splinter on the chair seat and sawed, counting breaths. Somewhere a laugh traveled down concrete, thin as wire. Across town, Wyatt hunted the trail. Shell companies pointed to a river property. A maintenance keycard had pinged an access panel an hour earlier. He called Silas. "Old pack house," he said. "South door sticks. Use your shoulder." Marlene, on speaker, added, "She hates citrus cleaner. She'll smell it if she's close. And Silas, bring her home." A drawer clattered. She was packing a first aid kit because hope needs work. Silas drove without radio. He killed his lights a block early and ran the last stretch, rain stitching cold through his shirt. The side door stuck, then yielded. Inside? A corridor, a forklift skeleton, 3 offices with wired glass. "Lorine," he called like a map. Echo answered. He moved faster. He found the chained door by the way the air felt held. The padlock was new. He braced and kicked. Metal cried and surrendered. The door swung open on a room where a bulb buzzed at nothing, where a chair lay on its side with tape curled like shed skin, where a scrap of zip tie glittered like a fishbone. The opposite door stood ajar, breathing river cold. For a heartbeat, prophecy weighed more than brass. Silas stepped into the threshold and saw emptiness arranged in the shape of his mistake. He whispered her name. The depot gave him back a sound. Somewhere deeper, a latch lifted, and footsteps retreated into dark. Silas stood in the doorway of the emptied room. The padlock skittered to one side like a dead beetle, the chair overturned and the cut zip tie gleaming like a fishbone on the floor. The depot's dark breathed river cold. Footsteps echoed somewhere deeper, fading. He swallowed the useless shout in his throat and forced his mind to narrow. Exits, stairwells, doors that stuck. Wyatt arrived at a run, rain stippling his suit, breath fogging. He took in the scene with a sweep, phone already out, thumbs moving. "Back route," he said half to himself. If they moved her fast, they avoided the main loading bay. Silas pointed down the hall. Doors swinging, wind from the river. Wyatt zoomed a satellite view, then rotated a blueprint he'd pulled from a permitting database. This place used to ship produce. There's a catwalk to a secondary dock, north wall, hidden by tarps from the street. There's also a maintenance stair to a mezzanine office. If they're staging anything on camera, it'll be with power outlets and clean sightlines. He paused, listening to the hum. Follow the whine. That's a ring light transformer. They moved. Wyatt's hand shot out to stop Silas at a corner. Camera. He pointed to a pinned phone, recording the corridor. Wyatt slid a handkerchief over the lens and kept going. "We do this clean," he murmured. "No cowboy moves unless we have to." Silas's jaw flexed. "She's in here. We don't have time for perfect." They hit the mezzanine stair and climbed into a narrow hall where citrus cleaner rode the air, sharp and recent. Silas thought of Marlene's voice on the phone. "She hates that smell. If you catch it, you're close, and let the memory steer him left." At the end of the corridor, a door stood ajar, light bleeding at the edges. Inside, Lorine worked. They didn't see her first. They heard the small, insistent rasp of plastic sawing against metal. She had anchored the zip tie bracing her ankles to a loose bracket beneath the chair and was dragging the plastic across the serrated edge, breath counting in silent fours to keep panic from splintering. Her wrists were purpled where she'd strained against the ties. Her eyes were clear and furious. Silas almost went to her then, but Wyatt's fingers dug into his sleeve. Wait. In the far corner, Xander scrolled through his phone. A slow sentinel, attention swinging between the screen and the room's only door. The ring light threw a sterile halo across a tripod and an empty chair. The staged mercy of Jordan's offer sat like a trap with a bow. Lorine felt the bracket bite deeper into the plastic. The first tie gave with a whispering snap. She stilled, listened. Xander didn't look up. She shifted her weight, drew her knees, and started on her wrists, the rough edge chewing millimeter by millimeter. Her mind listed what belonged to her. Breath, decision, the next small cut. Damsels waited. She worked. Silas leaned, eyes on the angle of her hands. Pride pressed hard against his ribs. Fear pressed harder. Wyatt caught his gaze, then flicked 2 fingers. I distract. You move when she moves. Silas shook his head. I'll take him, he mouthed. Wyatt's return look said, You're the headline. I'm the shadow. But he nodded once. They slid back to the hall and choreographed on a whisper. You draw him out and stay visible, Wyatt said. Give her a clear line. If he reaches for her, you take the hit. I'll cut the power to the light. Brief blackout. Fine, Silas said, already pulling in a breath big enough to fill a room. Wyatt moved toward the breaker panel. Silas stepped into the doorway and knocked hard on the metal frame, sound spiking through the space. Xander's head snapped up. "Looking for me?" Silas asked, voice ringing with casual contempt he didn't feel. "Or for a quote to go with your little movie." Xander smiled like a blade. "House of Stone walks into the frame. That's devotion." He slid the phone into his pocket and straightened. "Leave now, and I won't bruise your face." Silas lifted his hands, palms out. "She's coming with me." "Is she?" Xander took a step, then another, orbiting to keep himself between Silas and the chair. "Men like you enjoy the stage. This one comes with a fall." The breaker clicked. Darkness gulped the room. The ring light coughed and died. Xander swore. Emergency strips bled a red glow at floor level. Lorine pulled, twisted, and felt the last tie at her wrists shred. She surged to her feet with the chair still snarling her ankles, pitched forward, caught herself on the tripod and knocked it aside. Her fingers found the cold line of a metal pipe half hidden under tarp, weight promising. She wrapped both hands around it, the mark at her shoulder burning like a star. Xander lunged toward the sound of movement, and Silas intercepted him, a shoulder to the ribs, both of them hitting the wall. The phone clattered. Fists found muscle. Pain burst white in Silas's forearm where Xander's elbow landed. They grappled, boots scraping concrete, breath ragged. Lorine ghosted along the wall in the dim, pipe-balanced, every nerve tuned. Xander reared back to swing again. Silas braced for the blow. Lorine stepped into the space between their breaths and swung the pipe low, clean, across Xander's knee. The impact cracked like a snapped branch. Xander buckled, curse swallowed by pain. Silas drove him to the floor and pinned his arms. Wyatt, fast and precise, was suddenly there with a zip tie of his own, wrenching Xander's wrists behind his back and cinching until plastic bit. They all panted in the red-lit hush. The ring light flickered once and gave up. Rain shouldered the roof in long gusts. Silas turned to Lorine, shaking, hair pasted to her temples, pipe still in her grip. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, swallowed, nodded, then laughed, breathless and wild. "No, not this time." She dropped the pipe and it rang against the concrete, bright as liberty. He went to her, then stopped an arm's length away, palms open. "I wanted to tear every door off this place," he said, voice hoarse. "Wyatt made me wait. He was right. We protect you by letting you lead when you can." Wyatt snorted softly. "Write that down, Stone. I won't say it twice." Lorine's eyes flooded and steadied. "I was so afraid I'd be a symbol again," she whispered. "Someone else's story. A curse people pass around to excuse what they were going to do anyway." Silas shook his head. "You are not a symbol. You're a person. If the legend enters the room, it stands behind you, not in front." He exhaled, the tremor leaving his shoulders. "Tell me how you want to end this and I'll walk behind you." She wiped her face with the heel of her hand, the mark bright under her sleeve as if hearing. "We end it by choosing the light ourselves. No more dark rooms, no more edits. We go public, we tell the truth with cameras that aren't his." Wyatt nodded, already moving to collect Xander's fallen phone, already pulling cables from the ring light to disable whatever it had recorded. Town hall or the diner. Forecourt gets better angles. We can stream, invite local press, and bring the receipts, shell companies, metadata on the forged ledger. We'll control the narrative with proof. "Not we," Lorine said softly. "Us, together. I speak because it's my mark. Silas speaks because it's his name. Marlene speaks because it's our town. You," she looked at Wyatt. "Show the spine behind the suits." Wyatt's mouth twitched. "I prefer logistical courage," but noted. Silas stepped the last distance and took her hands, reverent. "When?" "Tomorrow," she said. "Before rumor can rehearse a new lie. We name the flame and what it means. We choose the ending." He lifted her knuckles and breathed against them like a vow. Then tomorrow we begin. In the corner, Xander chuckled through his teeth. You think crowds are kind. You think truth has teeth. He tasted blood and grinned. Jordan will turn your beginning into ash. Lorine looked down at him, calm as a steady match. Flames warm or burn, she said, remembering Marlene's voice. It's the hand holding the fire that decides. I'm done letting you hold mine. Outside, sirens ghosted the river road. Wyatt had texted coordinates 2 minutes earlier. Silas slipped his arm around Lorine's shoulders and felt the heat there as promise, not threat. They stood together in the red-lit room, breathing hard, not saved by a legend, but by a choice they were about to make in daylight. The diner forecourt had never held so many voices. Camera shutters clicked like frantic insects. Microphones leaned forward like spears, and the low hum of the crowd carried a residue of thunder still lingering from the storm. Reporters jostled with townsfolk, their whispers braided with skepticism and hunger. Signs flashed. Stone Dynasty cursed? Diner Girl Doomsday. Silas stood at the edge of the makeshift platform, Wyatt at his side, Lorine between them. Marlene clutched a folder of her own, lips pursed with quiet fire. They had chosen this place, home ground, not a boardroom, because legends only lived if you let them hide. The neon hum of the diner sign glowed overhead, stubborn against the night. Jordan arrived late, flanked by Xander, smugness sharpened into armor. He carried a leather case, and when he mounted the step, he flipped it open to scatter papers across a table with theatrical contempt. Proof, he declared, voice carrying easily to the gathered press. Proof that the Stones built their empire on exploitation, forged accounts, bribery, the same corruption that birthed this prophecy circus. He held up a printed still of the diner moment, the torn shirt, the flash of flame mark, cropped to make Silas's grip look violent, Lorine's eyes wide with shame. Gasps fluttered through the crowd. Silas's jaw tightened, but Wyatt raised a hand, calm as a metronome. Allow me. He stepped forward, tablet glowing in his hands. These so-called archives? Fabricated. Here, metadata. The screen filled with lines of code and timestamps, enlarged on a projector for all to see. These documents were created 3 months ago on a machine registered to one of Jordan's shell companies. Same trail links directly to property purchases surrounding this diner. Jordan didn't uncover truth. He manufactured a noose. Reporters leaned in, murmurs shifting pitch. Jordan's smirk faltered. Wyatt tapped again. And that viral video? Cropped. Here's the original. The larger screen flickered, replaying the moment in full. Silas catching a snag, fabric tearing, Lorine spinning with shock, the diner gasping, not predator and prey, but accident and awe. When the clip ended, silence rippled. Not condemnation, but the stunned intake before reversal. Marlene stepped forward then, her voice steady as church bells. She held the brass plaque Silas had shown Lorine, her thumb brushing the etched flame. You've all heard the prophecy in fragments. I heard it as a child, whole. Not just what was carved, but what was spoken. She lifted her chin. When the room falls silent for the flame-marked one, the house of stone shall end, or begin anew. But you never hear the rest, the lost line, the one that matters. Her voice lowered, then rose, pulling the crowd with her. The ending is chosen by the bearer. Eyes swung to Lorine, as if the words had cast a spotlight sharper than bulbs. Her heart pounded, but her feet carried her forward. She unpinned her sweater, tugged it down. The mark blazed on her shoulder under the press lights. Not curse, not shame. Fire owned. She raised her voice until the shutters fell into silence. I have been called omen, curse, ghost of a story I never asked for. But tonight I choose. I choose to begin anew, not as a prophecy, as a person, as Lorine. The hush fractured into applause, rising raw from townsfolk first, then even some reporters, the kind that know truth when it burns. Silas moved beside her, eyes shining not with claim but with clarity. And I choose with her. He turned, voice carrying over the crowd. The Stones profited here. That ends tonight. Effective immediately, shares tied to this diner's block are being transferred to a community trust. Funds will seed local jobs, repair, renewal. And the trust will not be run by me. It will be chaired by Marlene Carter, who has kept this place alive longer than our family ever cared to. Gasps again, but different now. Surprise that cut toward hope. Marlene's eyes filled, her hands tightening around the plaque. Jordan surged forward, snarling, "You can't—" Xander, boiling with fury, lunged for Lorine, but the crowd broke before he could. Townsfolk, tired of being pawns, moved first. Strong hands caught his arms, security swarming after. Xander fought, but he was pressed to the pavement, his roar drowned by cheers. Jordan's case clattered to the ground, his words choked in the noise, shredded for once not by silence, but by voices risen together. His play had collapsed, his myth stolen back by the very people he meant to frighten. Lorine turned, tears cutting her cheeks, as Silas stepped close. He cupped no claim, only steadiness. "I don't own you," he said, raw and plain. "I stand with you." Her chest ached, but her answer was easy, born of fire and choice. "And I choose you back." Applause thundered, not fearful hush, but living, breathing sound. The prophecy's silence was broken, not in doom, but in chorus. The flame-marked one had chosen, and the House of Stone, rebuilt in love and justice, had begun anew. The diner glowed like a lantern at the edge of the block, its new sign burning bright above the door. The Flame. Simple, clean letters painted in crimson arcs, the kind that caught the eye without shouting. For months, this building had been a war ground of whispers and cameras, but tonight it smelled only of fresh varnish, lemon polish, and coffee. I stood near the entrance and let myself take it in. The booths gleamed with new leather, the floor hummed under footsteps, and laughter bounced from tile to tile with a freedom that felt almost impossible. I had poured money into this renovation, but money had never been the point. The point was what I saw now. Townsfolk streaming back in, not to gawk at a legend, but to eat, to talk, to belong. Lorine moved among them, hair loose, apron gone. She no longer wore her uniform as a shield. She leaned into conversations, carried plates with ease, laughed when a child spilled soda. She was not hiding, and that truth hit me harder than any ledger or prophecy ever had. I had thought I was saving her, but she had claimed herself, and in doing so, saved me. At the counter, Wyatt sat with a mug of coffee, posture looser than usual. He had been the skeptic through it all, the one who called me reckless, who feared the legend's grip. Tonight, though, he watched Lorine with something different in his eyes. Respect. "You know," he said when I approached, "for years I thought the data told the whole story. Projections, margins, probability curves, that was safety to me." He stirred his coffee, gaze distant. "But she proved something I can't model. Sometimes the evidence isn't numbers, it's courage." I raised a brow. "That's almost poetic." He smirked faintly. "Don't tell anyone." Then, more softly, "She's the reason this place is full again. Not you, not me. Her." I followed his gaze and nodded. "That's why the trust has her name woven through it. I just signed papers. She's the one who made people believe again." Wyatt lifted his cup in a small toast. "To belief." When Lorine passed by, he touched her sleeve. "You made me revise my definitions. That's not easy." She smiled, her eyes warm. "Then maybe the next time you see a flame, you won't measure how fast it burns. You'll notice how far it warms." I almost laughed at the expression on Wyatt's face, half chagrin, half wonder. She had softened him in ways I never could. Later, as the night thinned and customers trickled out, Marlene wiped the counter with her habitual thoroughness. She'd said she wouldn't cry, but her eyes shone. When Lorine approached, Marlene slipped something into her palm. A worn recipe card, edges curled with time, ink faded but legible. "It's my mother's pie recipe," Marlene said, voice thick. "But look in the corner." Lorine tilted the card under the light. A tiny flame was sketched there in pencil, no bigger than a thumbnail. She drew that when she passed it down to me, Marlene explained. Said every kitchen has a fire and it's up to us whether it burns the house or feeds the family. I want you to have it. Make this place yours. Lorine's lips trembled. Marlene, No protests, Marlene said briskly, though her voice cracked. I've kept this diner breathing long enough. It's time for you to give it its soul. I watched Lorine fold the card carefully, holding it not like paper but like a blessing. When the doors finally locked and chairs were stacked, we stepped outside into streets rinsed by earlier rain. The air was cool and alive, carrying scents of asphalt and lilac from a nearby garden. The city hummed softly, no longer hostile. She slid her hand into mine, her fingers cool before they warmed against my skin. You don't have to guard me anymore, she said quietly. No more cameras, no more shadows waiting at the door. I don't want to guard, I answered. I want to walk beside you. She stopped under a street lamp, turning so the light painted her shoulder gold. The flame-shaped mark glowed faintly there, no longer hidden by sweaters or sleeves. For the first time, she wore it without fear. You know what terrifies me most? She asked. What? That someday we'll wake up and forget to choose. That we'll let the story make our decisions for us. Her eyes were steady, but her voice shook. Promise me we won't. I cupped her cheek, thumb brushing the damp edge of her hair. Then promise me this. We keep choosing each other, every day. Not because of fate, because it's what we want. Because it's us. Her smile broke slow, tender and fierce all at once. Every day, she whispered. I kissed her then, slow and certain, tasting rain still clinging to her lips. It wasn't the desperate kiss of survival or the trembling one stolen in shadow. It was steady, chosen, the kind that could last decades. We walked on, not toward towers of glass or boardrooms of whispers, but down a street glowing with lamplight and possibility. Behind us, the flame sign glowed red against the night sky, no longer a rumor, but a promise. I glanced once more at her shoulder, the mark catching the light. Not curse, not prophecy, a calling she had claimed and I had vowed to follow. And for the first time in my life, silence wasn't heavy with expectation. It was peace.